The blueprint for the Christian moral life assumes that we're living the Ten Commandments. The actual blueprint for the Christian moral life is found in Matthew chapter 5. Those are the 8 Beatitudes. How do you prepare for confession? You've finally decided, by the grace of God, to respond to his invitation to receive his mercy in the confessional, this great tribunal of God's mercy. And now you're asking yourself, how do I prepare to actually go forward and prepare for the sacrament? My name is Father Jerome Magat, and I'm the Vice Rector and a Professor of Moral Theology at St. Patrick's Seminary in Menlo Park, California. And again, if you like our material, please be sure to like and subscribe and share with others. So the big days come. You have decided, by the grace of God, to respond to his invitation to go forward, to go to confession, but you don't know what to do next. You don't want to walk in cold. You want to make some kind of preparation, but you're really not sure how. The truth is that most parishes where confession is offered have in their vestibule, the narthex, the entryway of the church. Sometimes you'll just think of it as a lobby of the building, or maybe in some little nook or cranny along the side walls where people stand as they wait in line to go to confession, a little pocket or a table where they have a sheet or sheets of paper at the top of which will say examination of conscience. And that's the typical standard way that people prepare for receiving the sacrament. But you could perhaps even start even before that. In fact, if you prefer not to wait till you get to church to look at the examination of conscience, and you actually want to make that preparation in the privacy of your home, or perhaps to get to church early so that you can spend time in front of our Blessed Lord in the Eucharist, in the tabernacle, just to speak with him one-on-one before you speak to the priest, this can be a real helpful preamble to receiving the sacrament. Now, the examination of conscience typically that you'll receive, you'll see these online, you'll see them at a parish. They tend to be really readily available. Most of them are really based on the 10 commandments. So you'll just have each of the commandments lined up, 1 through 10. And not only will it mention the commandment and sort of some of the obvious sins that are related to it, but there'll be lots of other related sins that could be associated with a particular commandment. And this will give you an opportunity to examine your soul and to question whether or not you've been guilty of this particular sin or not. But I think a good examination of conscience does 2 extra things. The first thing is that it starts with just a humble admission before God that you want to encounter and engage him in the sacrament at all. Even if, for instance, you had temporary amnesia inside the confessional, that desire is still within you, by the grace of God, to encounter his mercy. So I always say that a good examination of conscience isn't looking like at a sushi list and just checking off, I did 1 of these, 2 of these, 4 of these, but it's actually just an opportunity to metaphorically stand naked before God, who knows everything about us, what we have done in the past, what we might do in the future, even our current disposition or state of mind or state of heart. And just to place oneself in the presence of God, admitting of your need for mercy, and incredibly grateful that the sacrament of penance, the sacrament of reconciliation, going to confession, exists in the first place. And this, of course, helps the penitent, and it'll help you to really be at peace with the experience of the sacrament. I think that sometimes we can think that what we have to do is prepare in such a way that we want to sound impressive to the priest or sound that we're organized and all together. When the reality is that many of us carry so much internal angst and turmoil that we're not quite as organized or as polished as perhaps we'd like to sound. But that's okay. The priest is aware of that. I mean, good priest confessors are good penitents in their own right. They go to confession as well. So they're sympathetic to the idea that you may be having a hard day or having a hard time articulating the sins that you've committed. So the examination of conscience is still very helpful because what it does is that it helps to line up in a very organized, systematic way things that you perhaps have even forgotten that you've done. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, yeah, I forgot. That's against God's moral law. I should mention that. All right. So as you prepare for the sacrament of confession, it starts first with, again, as I said, just an encounter with our merciful Lord, just as this desire to receive his mercy and to really trust that you are loved. That's the great first starting point. Then you can get into the actual examination itself and all the different details. One of the things that you'll have to confess in your sacramental confession with the priest is what you have done and how many times. We typically call this number and species. These things should be mentioned to the priest. Now, for instance, if you can't remember how many times you committed a particular sin, then you can tell the priest, Father, to be honest with you, I don't know how many times I've committed this, but the priest might say, can you round it like a little, a lot, not so much? The most important thing, and St. Thomas Aquinas, the great angelic doctor, reminds us of this, is that God does not rely on our feeble memories in order to penetrate our souls to forgive us. So as long as we're in the general ballpark, that is more than sufficient for the priest to be able to absolve you. So if you're imprecise or you're not sure, that's okay. Just place before the Lord what's on your heart. He will do all the healing and all the forgiving. It's important too, when you prepare for the sacrament as well, I always recommend this. Start with the sins that you're most sorry for or the ones you find hardest to confess, the ones you find the hardest to say, either because you're embarrassed or you're frustrated or you're particularly sad about the sin that you committed. Start with those. Get those out of the way. Because what happens is if you're trying to build up to those, sometimes at the end, you can decide to, for lack of a better term, chicken out and not mention it. And that's not good because you want to confess all the sins that you're able to recall at the time. I should also say, if you forget a sin in your preparation and even in the actual confession, as long as you didn't purposely forget that sin, that's okay too. Again, as St. Thomas Aquinas reminds us, God does not rely on our feeble memories in order to penetrate our hearts and our souls to forgive us. The last thing I would recommend for preparation is as you're waiting in line to actually go in and kneel down behind the screen or sit across from the priest in a face-to-face confession, is don't forget to pray for the priest. Many people forget to do this, forget to pray for the priest. And trust me, as someone who hears confessions, I appreciate all the prayers I can get. A lot of penitents don't know this, but hearing confessions for priests can be rather exhausting. We can be sitting there for hours on end, and all we're hearing are people's sins. I mean, no one's telling us really any good news. I mean, the good news is they're being forgiven, but the things that are leading to that good news are sometimes very heavy for the priest to endure. Don't forget to pray for the priest who is hearing your confession. Trust me, I speak for all priests when we greatly appreciate that little amount of grace to help us persevere and to treat you as the penitent as if you're the only person whose confession we're hearing that day. It's really hard, I think, for penitents to sometimes understand that, after doing this for hours on end sometimes, especially during Lent and Advent, when these tend to be longer hours in the confessional for priests, that we're listening to your confession as if we have nothing else going on that day. Please pray for your priests. And then the last thing is, as you enter into the confessional, always just say a quick prayer, even however quickly you can, of trust in the Lord, trusting in his mercy. Believe you me, there's an immense amount of grace that has already gone into you responding to this knowledge you have in your heart that you're in need of his mercy, the desire to make a proper preparation, and then to actually go to the confessional. There's one last thing I want to say about preparation for the sacrament. Oftentimes when you read your examination of conscience, it's going to be based on the 10 commandments. And that's fine. It's standard. We've been doing that in the church for centuries. But Don't forget, and I speak here as a moral theologian, the blueprint for the Christian moral life assumes that we're living the Ten Commandments. The actual blueprint for the Christian moral life is found in Matthew chapter 5. It's also found in a version in St. Luke's Gospel as well, but those are the 8 Beatitudes. And it's important to, I think, in your preparation, to make sure you look at the Beatitudes as well, because that can often be a place where you can discern whether or not you have lived up to the aspirations of the Beatitudes and hopefully in some degree of measure already experiencing their promise. So preparation is key. Don't just rush into a confession. Take your time, listen for the Lord speaking in your heart, and trust in His mercy. If you like this content and other content we provide here at St. Patrick's Seminary, be sure to check out our other videos. And as always, like, subscribe, and share. And as always, thanks for watching.